On the night of July 14th, 1998, the small town of Berea, Ohio, was quiet. It was a Tuesday. The air was humid after an afternoon thunderstorm. At 1427 West Street, 17-year-old Jessica Marie Moore locked the front door of the Miller family's two-story colonial home. She checked on the children, 6-year-old Emily and 4-year-old Jacob, who were finally asleep upstairs after 2 bedtime stories. She walked back downstairs, poured herself a glass of water, and opened her biology textbook on the kitchen table. She had a test on Friday. She was saving every dollar from babysitting for nursing school at Cleveland State. Jessica was not a stranger to this house. The Millers had hired her 6 times before. Mrs. Miller later told police Jessica was the only babysitter who actually cleaned up after the kids. At 7:04 p.m., Tom and Karen Miller had left for their cousin's wedding in downtown Cleveland. They told Jessica they would be home by midnight. They gave her the house number for emergencies, $20 for pizza, and a spare key. At 9:03 p.m., Jessica called her mother, Diane Moore, from the Miller's kitchen phone. The call lasted 2 minutes and 47 seconds, according to phone records. Diane asked if everything was okay. Jessica said yes, the kids were angels, she was studying, and her boyfriend Mark would pick her up at 11:30. Diane remembered her daughter laughed about a funny drawing Emily had made. That laugh was the last time Diane ever heard her daughter's voice. At 10:27 p.m., a neighbor named Mrs. Helen Carter was walking her beagle past the Miller house. She saw the living room television glowing blue through the sheer curtains. She saw Jessica's silhouette on the couch. Everything looked normal. At 10:55 p.m., another neighbor, Frank DeLuca, who lived directly behind the Millers, heard his own dog bark once, very sharp, then go silent. He looked out his back window into the dark alley, but saw nothing. He went back to bed. At 11:47 p.m., exactly, Jessica's boyfriend, 19-year-old Mark Stevens, felt his Motorola pager vibrate in his pocket. He was at his friend's garage playing video games. He looked down at the small green screen. It showed Jessica's home number and a message. "He's here." Mark stared at it for a second. He assumed Jessica meant her stepfather had arrived early to pick her up. He put the pager back in his pocket and did not call her. That decision would haunt him for the next 27 years. 20 minutes passed. Mark felt uneasy. Jessica had not texted again. At 12:08 a.m., he drove his old Honda Civic to the Miller's house. The porch light was still on. The front door was unlocked. He called out Jessica's name. No answer. The television was still on, playing static. He walked into the kitchen and saw Jessica's backpack on the counter, her white sneakers by the back door, and her pager blinking on the kitchen table. The back sliding door was closed, but the lock was not engaged. He ran upstairs. The 2 children were asleep. Jessica was gone. Mark called 911 at 12:14 a.m. on July 15th. The Berea police dispatcher logged the call as a possible missing juvenile. Officer Daniel Price arrived at 12:21 a.m. He walked through the house in under 5 minutes. He noted no signs of forced entry, no broken glass, no overturned furniture. In the kitchen sink, he found 2 drinking glasses. One was clean. The other had a faint pink lipstick mark on the rim, the same shade Jessica wore that night. On the linoleum floor near the back door, he found a single, partial muddy boot print. It was a men's size 11 work boot, pointing inward, as if someone had just stepped inside. The police made their first critical error that night. Because Jessica was 17 and had a boyfriend, the initial report was filed as a possible runaway. They did not secure the backyard or the alley behind the house. They did not call in the state crime lab until 36 hours later. In that time, another thunderstorm washed away the entire driveway and the alley. Any tire tracks, any footprints outside, were gone forever. Detectives interviewed Mark for nearly 6 hours. They interviewed Tom Miller, the father of the children, for 3 hours. They polygraphed both men. Both passed. They had no suspects. The FBI was brought in on day 3. They created a profile. White male, aged 25 to 40. Likely lived within walking distance, had been watching the house. Flyers with Jessica's school photo were posted at every Dairy Queen, every gas station, every church in Cuyahoga County. Nothing. For the next 27 years, Diane Moore lived in the same house on Front Street. She never touched Jessica's bedroom. The posters of NSYNC and the nursing school acceptance letter stayed on the wall. Every Tuesday at 9 a.m., she called Detective Price and later his successors to ask for an update. In 2005, a psychic on national television claimed Jessica was alive, working as a waitress in Tampa, Florida. Diane spent her life savings flying there. It was not her. In 2011, construction workers found bones near Interstate 71. DNA testing took 14 agonizing days. It was a male hiker from the 1970s. The case went cold. The file gathered dust. Until 2024. That year, Ohio created the Cold Case Genetic Genealogy Unit with new funding. Detective Sarah Klein, who was only 8 years old when Jessica disappeared, pulled the dusty evidence box. Inside, in a small paper envelope, was a single cotton swab from 1998. A technician had swabbed the inside of that muddy boot print, hoping one day technology would catch up. In 2024, it finally had. Detective Klein sent the swab to Othram Labs in Texas. 3 months later, in October 2024, she got a call. The lab had extracted a full male DNA profile from the mud. It was degraded, but usable. Using genetic genealogy, they built a family tree that led to a small town in Kentucky. At the top was a name: Robert Eugene Hale. In 1998, Hale was 32 years old. He lived at 1433 West Street in Berea. That was 3 houses down from the Millers, directly across the alley. He worked as a night janitor at Berea Middle School. He had no criminal record, no arrests, no tickets. He was invisible. Neighbors remembered Hale as quiet. He kept to himself. In August 1999, just 13 months after Jessica vanished, Hale sold his Ohio house for cash, well below market value. He told neighbors his wife was sick and they were moving to her family's farm in rural Kentucky. He was never seen in Ohio again. In January 2025, Klein got a search warrant for the old Hale house, which had been vacant for years. In the basement behind the water heater, a crime scene technician noticed the drywall was newer than the rest of the house. They cut it open. Behind it was a crawl space, 4 feet high, 5 feet deep. The air smelled of damp earth. Inside, they found a small silver locket, tarnished green. Inside was a photo of a teenage girl. Engraved on the back were the initials JM. They found a blue hair scrunchie, the exact kind Jessica wore in her school photo, and wrapped in a plastic tarp. Inside a Berea Gazette newspaper, dated July 15, 1998, they found human skeletal remains. DNA confirmed in 48 hours. Jessica Moore. On February 3, 2025, Kentucky State Police arrested Robert Hale at his farm. He was 58. During interrogation, he confessed within an hour. He said he had watched Jessica walk home from her Dairy Queen shift for weeks. On July 14th, he saw the Millers leave. At 11:30 p.m., he walked to the back door and knocked. He told Jessica his car broke down and he needed to use the phone. Jessica, being kind, cracked the door open. He forced his way in. She ran for the phone and hit the quick dial for Mark's pager. She typed, "He's here," with her thumb as he grabbed her from behind. Hale took her out the back door to his van in the alley. He kept her in that basement crawl space. He moved her to Kentucky when he moved. Hale died of a heart attack in Cuyahoga County Jail on March 19, 2025, before trial. Jessica was buried on April 12, 2025. 400 people came. Diane placed the locket in her hands. On her stone, it reads, Jessica Marie Moore, July 14th, 1998, to April 12th, 2025. Home, at last. Her last two words were not a mystery. They were a warning. For 27 years, we just didn't know who he was.